Hi, I'm here, and today I have my best of 2018. Now, I didn't get to cover everything I really wanted to in 2018. For example, there aren't going to be any Bluetooth headphones. There aren't going to be any IEMs, except with the special mention. There's a lot of stuff I didn't get to. I didn't get to as many headphones as I intended, but all the same, here's what out of the stuff I did get to, here's what I really liked. So to start with, I've got a few categories in here, and the first of those is going to be the best closed back headphones from $500 to $1,000 mark. Now that's an important mark because tend to be a lot of headphones that were below $500 and a lot that were above $1,000. So to have a few entries come in that kind of upper mid-range mark was kind of really critical. And the first of those, of course, was MrSpeakers' Aeon Flow. And now they took the technology they used in the ethers and they simplified it down to a pair of headphones they could sell, for the kind of $700 to $800 mark. And out of that, they did a really good job, enough so that I remember when they released them at Tokyo, they had engineers from other companies coming by to check them out, just very impressed by what they had managed to achieve. Now, the other pair of headphones that was significant that came out was Campfire Audio's Cascades, and that was years of work by Ken Ball on a pair of closed-back headphones. Now, he'd been really inspired. Years ago, he used to modify ultrasound headphones, such as the Edition 9 and some of the hi-fi models, and I tried the Edition 9 modified by him, I tried Edition 8, none of them quite satisfied me, so it was really great to have him come out with a pair of kind of V-shaped sounding, really entertaining sounding pair of headphones with the Cascades, and also, much like Dan Clark did with the Aeons, is that you can tune them very slightly with inserts. Now, between the two, I think the headphones that I ended up grabbing the most when they were sitting on here were the Cascades, and although the Aeon flows are very neutral, it was the kind of entertaining sound of the Cascade that made a lot of music that normally kind of sound a little bit boring through more neutral tuned headphones, that made them more entertaining. And for most of the music I like, that kind of entertainment made me grab the Cascades very often to listen with. And what kind of was the icing on the cake was that I could use my cables that I'd used with the HD800 with them, as they use the same connectors primarily for reliability. And while they aren't the most comfortable and maybe not quite the most ergonomically designed, I still found them a really entertaining and enjoyable pair of headphones. So kudos to Ken Ball. For me this year, the Cascades were my best closed back headphones for the $500 to $1,000 mark. Now, that leads on to the other headphones, which are the open back headphones for $500 to $1,000. Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. We'll say $400 to $1,000 because I'm going to slip in the HiFiMan Sundaras. Now, they are the successor to the well-known and well-loved 400 series, and they're very industrial looking. They've again, this is a simplification of their existing designs. They managed to cut that down to a really good sounding, really great pair of headphones to listen with in general, and they'll power out of pretty much anything. And but the other contenders in that kind of upper tier price, upper mid price range before you get into the kind of high end $1,000 plus price range were very competitive. Massdrop partnered with Focal with the LX, which were a really great pair of headphones and really easy to grab and listen with, both comfort-wise, a really well-made pair of headphones. And they're still regularly available at the same price on Massdrop on and off. And the last pair of those headphones was the open back version from MrSpeakers of the Aeon Flow. Now, in the end, it was a very close call for me between, say, the Massdrop Focal LX and the Aeon Flow Open. But I think what really nailed it for me with the Aeon Flow Open is that you can tune them very slightly. You can put inserts in, put the black inserts in for preference, and bring out the treble just a little bit more, and they ended up being a really balanced listen for me. And that combined with that very unique and very clever design with the Nitnol headband, simplified for the Aeon series, kind of nailed it for me. And that my choice for the best open back headphones of 2018, and they kind of, we'll say, the $499 to $1,000 mark are the MrSpeakers Aeon Flow Open. So, going on to different kinds of components, we have the best desktop digital components for 2018. And so that I had more contenders. There's more stuff here, although a couple of things still haven't been reviewed. We have Schiit Audio's Yggdrasil Analog 2 upgrade with the Generation 5 USB. That was significant upgrade to a very well-loved DAC from the American company. The next up was iFi's Pro iDSD, which has everything in the kitchen sink built in. The next is Audio GD's R28, and that they managed to cram in R1 DAC and the NFB1 amp in the same chassis. So in that regard, they managed to achieve that with a new chassis and put both of them in there to make a really great DAC amp combination with a compensated ladder DAC built in. And for not much more than $1,000, that is a really great entry. Now the next on the list is also from Audio GD, the R2R11. Now that takes an NFB11 but puts the same modules, the same R8 modules as you do have in the R1 DAC inside a smaller chassis. Obviously, there's not as good a power supply, but that is probably, as far as I know, the cheapest compensated ladder DAC that you can buy nowadays, and especially with a built-in headphone amp, makes it great value. Anyhow, out of those, it was an interesting choice of interesting to go through the choice of components. I think one of the most impressive devices this year was the Pro iDSD from iFi, but however, they announced it with MQA support in the documentation, even though it didn't actually support MQA yet. And also the firmware that does have MQA is kind of flaky at the moment, and there have also been some other issues such as you can't shut off the Wi-Fi, which has been a problem with me because the Wi-Fi, if I leave the aerial on, and get some noise coming through the headphones. And there have been kind of other niggling issues, and it hasn't been quite right yet. So if they do really nail it, get everything nailed down, it should be a really fantastic product. But until then, the product that really kind of nailed it for me in terms of both value and really sound quality was Audio GD's R28 DAC amp. Now for just over $1,000 you can get what one guy on HeadFi called his end game, and for a lot of people, and I've never hesitated to say that you don't have to spend big money to really get enjoyment out of listening to most common music. But if you want something that's kind of getting into that high end without spending thousands of dollars, this product really nails it. It will drive most headphones fine. I mean, it has a really great DAC built in there. It has a great, reasonable, quite a degree of flexibility in it, in that you can use it as a preamp, you can use it as a headphone amp or as a DAC. If you do buy a better headphone amp down the track, you can use it as a really good DAC to that headphone amp. And it doesn't have things like the latest stuff like isolated USB or what have you, but it still sounds so good that I can easily recommend it in the kind of $1,000 range for a DAC amp. So that for me is my desktop digital component for 2018. Now, next up on the list is the best portable digital component for 2018. Now, I did have a good range of products that I went through this year. We had FiiO's M9 DAP, and we had the Hiby R6 and the Shanling M0. So we had 3 DAPs in there. And on the other hand, we had DAC amps such as FiiO's Q5. We had iFi's xDSD, and we had little diminutive Bluewave Get. So going through these, they're all great, and all of them in their own way kind of shattered barriers that had existed. For example, if we ignore the DAPs for the moment, say if we go back to when Chord came out with the Mojo, it was for $600. It was outstanding value for the kind of for what was crammed in there in terms of sound quality. So it was to have iFi go lower than that with a really great DAC amp, which had Bluetooth included, which is something the Mojo doesn't. And to get the poly add-on, of course, then you need another $600. To get that at a lower price range with almost as good sound quality was a really fantastic effort from them. Not only that, they had their extra bass and a 3D mode included in there, and quite a reasonable headphone driving power as well, and all in a nice shiny case. Now, the only thing is that my only negative on that was like the rather confusing choice of a HiFiMan style balanced 3.5mm socket, which is not featured on any other iFi product. And that's kind of my only kind of criticism of iFi, is that they're kind of inconsistent with what sockets they do put on their devices. They're kind of sometimes the 2.5mm shows up, sometimes 3.5mm, sometimes others. They haven't really got a consistent message in what they show. The other one is that it is kind of quite a fingerprint magnet, and the case scratches very easily, so it really needs some kind of case. But they did include some carefully cut strips of a 3M dual lock, which is a big step up from including Velcro, for if you did want to attach it to another device. But otherwise, it was a really outstanding release from them. FiiO's Q5 was also very good as a DAC amp, and it cleverly uses the X7's modules, so you can choose between lower power and longer battery life, or higher power and less battery life. And that, it had a lot of features, but the only problem with it is that 2 big ones is that you need a smartphone to access all the features. Such if you want to put the USB, have the side socket for the audio input, then you need to have it in. Need to have a smartphone to activate the app for that. And the other thing is it doesn't have LDAC support, and LDAC Bluetooth is everyone's asking about it nowadays. And kind of without that, it's kind of limiting in what it can and can't do. So I think if they produced maybe a smaller, like almost M9 size, a Q5 Mark II or something with LDAC support, that could be very, very popular. But it's only really that kind of held it back. But otherwise, a very functional and very good sounding device. Bluewave came up with a Get after a few years of effort. And when they finally did, it really sets the bar for value at, even you can find it at $100 on places such as Massdrop. And for such good sound quality for such little money, it's not going to do a fantastic job driving headphones, but for most stuff, like so IEMs or plugging into the car stereo or basic headphone use, it was really, really good. The only thing that kind of prevents me saying, oh, this is, a top device of 2018 is that there are other devices around that price range now which have more functionality available. So, but still all the same, a great effort from them, and it's a device I still use. So actually, the Shanling M0, in terms of when we get into the DACs, is one that deserves very special mention. And to get crammed so much into such a small space was a really great effort from Shanling. Really the only thing that holds it back, considering it has Bluetooth LDAC support as well, is that the user interface is a little bit of a pain to use. It could have been optimized better, and it was kind of that. I sometimes found it extremely irritating to use, as did other people. But when it does work pretty well. And there were a couple of little buggy issues, such as the USB out not always working. So it was kind of almost there, but a great effort from them. So the component that did it was also another one that broke barriers in terms of price and value, and that was the Hiby R6. Now, to get a full kind of smartphone kind of power out of a DAP, you have to get something like the Astelink and S&P 1000, but to get something that's like much cheaper, $400 to $600 depending on choices you make, with full smartphone kind of power, full Android interface, a full music player, support for everything Tidal and Spotify and what have you out of the box. To have all that in a really great DAP, despite its 10 ohm output impedance, that didn't seem to really hold it back, and it's only sonically, not so far behind the high-end DAPs that it really matters. It's only one of those things that you compare with good music to notice the difference. It was really outstanding value, and to run a crowdfunding campaign as they did, they only needed to get the money to manufacture it. That was all that was required, and then everyone got their products. There were no issues and no hassles whatsoever. That was really fantastic. That was one of the only product I ever chose to review prior to it being fully released. So that for this year is my portable digital component of the year. But all the same, all the manufacturers busting price barriers was just really fantastic. Next on the list, best desktop headphone amplifier, and that I had plenty to choose from with a huge price range to go through. We had Schiit Audio Lyr 3, we had the Massdrop CTH, which will be coming up in my review of cheaper components. We had Schiit Audio's Magni 3 amp, which is for $99, the cheapest amps available out there. It's got down to that the old Objective 2 kind of price, but from a major manufacturer. Audio on the other end, we had Audiovalve massive Solaris at €5,000. We had Audio Duty's Master 9, which isn't really a 2018 product. It's been around for much longer than that, but all the same, I threw it in there anyway. Soundaware's P1, which was a unique product to come out from that Chinese company. IFI's Pro iCan I put in there as well because I reviewed that this year. And there's a lot to go through in that. Given the huge difference in price range, I think it was the value that was a big deal for me in all of this. The Magni is hard to ignore. $99 for an amp, and of course you're going to be using it with a DAC, and they've just released a $99 DAC to go with it. So you can do a $200 rig from Schiit Audio now, which is really fantastic, and it's as good as amp as you expect to be for $99. On the other end, you had at €5,000 the Audiovalve Solaris. You can get even €6,000 with a DAC included. So it aims to do everything in the kitchen sink. It can drive speakers, it can drive Susvaras, it can drive electrostats, it can drive IEMs, and you just have to be careful where you twiddle the knobs, because if you plug the IEMs with the wrong settings, you could blow them up. But other than that, it was just everything in the kitchen sink. But for that kind of money, you could easily buy a full Schiit stack or a full Audio GD stack. So it's very hard to kind of it's a very hard issue on value there, though some people might find it attractive enough just to buy the whole kit and enjoy themselves with headphones and maybe some low-powered or very sensitive speakers. So In the mid-range, Master 9. The Master 9 is a very sophisticated amp, has a lot of features. It is so quiet, you can drive, you can barely pick up anything. There's no hiss at all, even with things like the Andromedas or Solaris IEMs, even though it's not designed as an IEM driving amp. It's absolutely dead neutral in terms of tuning. It just gets out of the way. It's a very detailed amp. The only thing is it could be a little bit bland. And I think what the thing was, when I was reaching for an amp that I wanted to listen with, I ended up more wanting to listen with Soundaware's P1. Now, it's not quite as detailed, but we're only a tiny bit behind kind of the Master 9 in terms of detail. But it had a slight sweet sound that made it very listenable. It's got enough flexibility in there. You've got some preamp outputs as well. It's got plenty of power. It'll drive Susvaras. A really, really nice device to use. And it's small and compact as well, and probably maybe more sensitive to power input than the Master 9, but all the same, at $1,000 to $1,500 mark was a really nice entry there, and very, very competitive. iFi's Pro iCan, as it adds a lot of really amazing number of features. You have 3D support, extra bass support, you have choice of solid state and tube modes, you have all these options available to you. It'll drive everything from IEMs up to Susvaras again, has preamp outputs. The only thing is that while it did add a lot of great drive to, say, if you're plugging in directly to an iFi's Pro iDSD, it didn't have as much detail as the other amps did. So it was kind of like I plugged in the xDSD and I plugged in the HiiO 2, and I couldn't hear the difference between them in terms of detail through that amp, which sort of said, there's some detail missing here. It's also kind of not being able to switch out the preamp mode, and the preamp mode being affected by the gain levels was kind of a shortcut that annoyed me a little bit in that way. But, if you like, tuning the sound is more important than, getting the last ultra bit of detail out of it. It was a really good amp, but kind of not quite enough for me to give it an award for 2018. What did really impress me was the Lyr 3. Now, it is not the most detailed amp. It is not, it's not a high-end amp, but it is such an entertaining listen. And you can plug in even just a little Modi multi-bit into it, which, the Modi multi-bit, if I plug into the high-end amps, I can hear its distortion very clearly. But through the Lyr 3, it didn't matter. It was just an entertaining amp to listen with. It's coloured. It's, slightly gives a presentation that would be arguably slightly V-shaped. But in terms of value, that's where it really nailed it. It's good enough to drive everything really, really well. It's a good step up from the cheaper amps like the Magni 3, the CTH, the Valley 2. And it's at that critical point where you can say, buy this amp, you'll have a good time listening with it. If you're not the kind of person like me that'll listen critically, then, and you're careful inserting the tubes, because the tubes can be inserted the wrong way in it, it is a really great amp. And if you do want to play around with tube rolling, there are an absolute huge number of tubes that can be rolled through it. It is straight 6SN7s or others with adapters. So really, I think for me, in the end, it was the Lyr 3 that had the most entertaining, with very close behind, at obviously the higher price, Soundaware's P1. So sadly, I didn't have an IEM range this year because there are so many IEMs that were released. I'm not a big IEM person. Maybe in the next year we'll see what happens. But one special mention that has come in just at the end of the year is Campfire Audio's Solaris. Now, Ken Ball, once he released the Andromedas, they became such a huge hit. Doing better than them was a real big task for him, and I have got them in. I've got them run in, and I will say they are fantastic. And you're going to have to wait for the review for the fine details, but I'll give you one tidbit. I thought, well, I'm going to start my critical listening with the Astel & Kearns AK380 because that's what I have on hand. High-end DAP, plenty of detail. And I thought, well, I'll listen to this song, and I'll listen to the same song through the HiiO 2 and the Solaris, and there was a noticeable jump up in sound quality. And to have noticed that difference between high-end components with a pair of IEMs is pretty fantastic. So I'll be getting into that because they'll be going through a lot of different music preferences. They are fantastic with some music and not so fantastic with other music. So I'll get into all that in my review. So do check out that in 2019. So I hope you enjoyed my best of 2018 for this year. Thanks once again to all my supporters. My supporters on my patrons have been a great help in being able to get these videos happening this year. If you'd like to support me in any kind of way, do check out the links below in the description. Otherwise, I hope you had a great 2018. I look forward to all seeing you in 2019.